Hello and welcome to the next installment of our multiplayer framework plugin. In this video we're going to start on our C++ for the join session UI interface. I'm going to start in the multiplayer with a new class. This one's going to be based off our original button. This is going to be called sGame session button. And it's going to be based off our original button base. So S button base, going to be abstract. And first thing we're going to do on here is create a function to set text displays on the button. So this is going to be what you'd click to join a session that comes up in the lobby like session browser. So put in a protected section here. And now we just want, so whatever information we're going to display on the join session button, that's what we're going to need here. So I'm going to display the map text, the ping to the server, the player count, and the max player count. And they're bound to widgets, so they'll be common text widgets inside the editor. That is it. That is a real simple one. So the next one we're going to create is a session entry. So this is what we'll use to populate a list of entries. So basically a list of those buttons we just created. So this will be called sGame session entry. And this is going to inherit from a new class that we haven't used before, and it is called common tab list widget base. And we're going to implement an interface on this, and that's called IUserObjectListEntry. So we'll need an include for that. And the include is the blueprint IUserObjectListEntry. So we're going to have a native initialized for this widget. And then as part of the interface, there's a function called native onList item object set. And we just want to override that. So that's how we'll build our list objects. We'll add a protected section. And then in here we want a function for when one of the objects is selected, and then we'll have another one for when join session is complete. And then we'd need to bind to the widget button, which is the previous class that we just made. So we need to just include that. Reference that. So let's initialize these. So in here we just want to bind when we click the entry that it calls this on session selected. So we're going to check if our session button is valid. And then we're going to use the on clicked. We need to include the session button.h. And then we're going to bind the on click event to that function. And then in the on session selected, this is where we need to commence our joining. So we're going to need a reference to player and the world. So we'll just confirm we can do that. They're valid. We can use the world to get a reference to the game instance. And the reason why we're getting I'm just going to include that, the common game instance.h. And we need a common game instance reference so we can get the session subsystem from the game instance. And we're just going to include that. Now we're going to need a bind to the on join session complete here. What we want to do is we want to save that delegate handle so we can unsubscribe from it. So just going to make down the bottom here, it's going to put a delegate handle, join session handle, and then in the session selected, we can then bind to the session subsystems on join session complete event, and we're going to add a U object and bind to on join session complete, which is this function down here. Before we do that function, we need to actually now kick off the join session. So it's going to be session subsystem join session. We're going to pass the player, and this is the search result, which is what we'll create in this function here. We'll do that. We'll come back to that. Again, I just want to get a reference to the subsystem, so I'm going to check the player and the world I can get are valid. If the result is true also, I'm going to continue on, and I'm just going to get a reference to the subsystem, just like we did above. And then I'm going to remove that event using the handle that we created here. So on the on join session complete event, I'm going to remove our binding that we created here. And then this area here is where we could, like if we had a loading screen or a loading spinner to join a server, we could then just pop that off the stack. But we'll leave that for now. We just want to get rid of that binding to that event. So we need to sort out this session search result. So I'm going to create a variable for that. Let's put that in here. So it's a common session search result. Add the forward declaration for that. And then in the native on list item object set. So this will fire for each item that is added to the list. So each session that's found will generate one of these entries. So, and this is like an initializer like for those entries. So the object that will be passed in will be the session search result. So we just need to cast it to the search result type. It'll be as a U object. And then if that search result cast is valid, we can continue. So now what we want to do is we want to extract the session search result from the game data from the session search result. So we would have found a game online or wherever, and now it's in the list, and we want to grab the data that they're using, and that's in the hosting arguments, if you recall. So we're going to use a function in the search result, which is get string setting, and that's similar to, if we just go to our game mode quickly and go to this handle data assignment, it's similar to this options string. We're basically reading this options string on the server and getting this game mode, whatever's set in there, which is how we got our game data before, if you recall. So this function's going to need a few parameters. If you look here, it's going to need the name, a value that's going to pass out as reference, and a bool if it's found or not. So we'll just create a string, we'll create the bool, and then the setting is that setting that we just looked at, which is the string for game mode, and we've got that in our static game data. So I've just included that. And then what was it after next? Was the string value. So this is what it's going to populate and return the string for us. So we need to pass in a variable for that to be populated, and same for the string. So now we can check that bool to see if it found a string. If it has, we need to generate our game data, or find our game data in the game system. So we're gonna create the type using just a static reference and getting the name of that static class reference. So that'll be the type, which will be game data. And then to get our game data ID, it's the same as how we've done it before. We've passed the type and the F name of the string that's returned. So we are going to populate the game data to a variable. So we'll create that, put that underneath here. So that's our game data. Now, because this might happen on a client, it may not have loaded that game data yet to memory, so we need to go through the asset manager and load that game data. I'm going to get a reference to the asset manager, include that, and if our game data, well, actually I should put this on the outside, because if it's not valid we don't even want to bother. Otherwise we'll do a log just so we know something's going wrong. The game data asset ID is not valid or couldn't be found at all. And then inside the asset manager, this is where we want to do our load. So we're just going to pass a blank bundle because we don't need bundles. We're going to set up our delegate as before, and we're going to call an on-game data loaded function. So we'll create that in a minute. We'll just load the asset. So we're going to load our game data ID with a blank bundle, doesn't matter, and passing the delegate to call when it's finished loading the game data ID. So let's create this function here, and this should be a U function because it's going to be called from a delegate, although I think because it's not, so interesting. It wants to put common user in the public dependencies. Okay, let's go along with that. I didn't get that last time. We just want to check that the game data that we were trying to load is still valid. And then we're going to need to cast to our game data class now so we can start reading the data from it. So we're going to need the reference to the asset manager again. And then we just need to get the primary asset object and cast it to the game data class. Now if our session button's valid, we can set the information on it from either our result from the server or from the game data itself. So this is where we're going to call our set displays that we had up here. No, sorry, it's on the session button. So set displays was a function we set up, and we're going to want to pass in the game name, the game name first. Okay, game map ping player count, max player count. So to get the ping, we can use it's in the session search result as get ping in milliseconds function. And then we can, because of this, wants it as text, because it's populating text, we can just use the ftext as number. We're grabbing a number and just passing it as text. And then we need what was the next one? So this would be the available player count. So it's going to be max player count minus the number of open connections. I think that's right. And then the last bit is just the max connections. Just indent this. Right, so that passes that and sets our button. These are got green highlights because they can be constant. So that should populate our game session entry. So our next one is the actual menu itself. I'm going to add a class. This will be s-menu join session widget. And this will inherit off the common activatable widget. Put it on there. So abstract. We're going to functions here, the native on initialize, on activation, and the get desired focus target, which is a common user widget thing for when you want to input into key input into UI. Not really using that, but just want to show how you can set that in C++. So for the join session, we're going to have a button for refresh the list, the session list. So, and we also just want to start the session list when it loads. So we're going to need a function to start a search. While the search is happening, we're going to display a spinner. So we'll create a function to set and disable the spinner. And then when we click the button to start a search, we'll just have a function for on refresh list. And then we'll also need a function for the event when you click the back menu. So when you go back to whatever menu was previous. And then there's also, we're going to need a function for when the search result is complete. So this is what, we'll turn our spinner off and display the list and do whatever else. Put this in here. And this is actually comes from a delegate, so it's got its own signature here. So it's got a bool if it was successful. It's got an error message text, and it's passing that session search result. And this is, if you recall, what we're just using to build to get the data from about the session itself. So just going to add that forward declaration for that. Now there's a few widgets that are going to make up this menu. We're going to have a list view, which is what we're going to have a forward declaration for that. We're going to have a couple of buttons, which I just mentioned, which will be the refresh button and the back button. We're going to have a display. We'll put that in within a border, but it's just a display so there's no sessions found. And then we're also going to need a reference to a spinner. So when we turn on the spinner, it'll show the spinner. And then we'll just add a boolean for when a search is in progress, just so we can do things like prevent you refreshing the list over and over when it hasn't finished the current search, or you could even stop it from, the back button from working if you wanted to while the search is going on, anything like that. So just include our base button for forward declaration and common border, like so, and we can generate these. So in initialize is where we want to bind our buttons. So we've got our refresh button and we've got our back button. So we just need to bind the on-click events. So the refresh button on clicked will bind to that on refresh list function, just including the button base widget.h. The back button will bind the on click to the on back menu, and we'll just initialize our set spinner display to false, so we don't want to show it at the start. And then on activated, this is where we just want to start our search. So let's let's populate on back. It's probably the easiest one. So it's the same as we did it last time on the host menu. We're going to get a world reference. We're going to get a reference to our primary game layout, and we're just going to remove this menu from that layout. So it's removing itself from the layer stack. And the other one was on refresh list. And we only want to be able to do this if there's no search in progress. And if there isn't a search in progress, then we'll start a search. So for our spinner display, we just want to check that our reference to our spinner is valid. And then we'll set a spinner visibility based on the spinner state that gets passed in. So if it's true, it'll be visible. If it's false, it'll be collapsed. Need to include the common border.h for that. We'll do the desired focus. Where's that? Here. So above this super, say if the list view is valid, then we will return the list view as the focus. And I just need to include the common list view.h, and that's just to set the input control to the list view. So if you're using a controller to navigate the UI, that would make the list view where it would start. And then if the list view isn't valid, then it's just going to set whatever the parent says it should set. Alright, so now we can start on our search. So I'm going to put a log in here just for debugging. Let's say start search. And then what we'll do is we'll just do a bunch of checks that we need to do. So we just need to check that if the search is in progress. So if the search is already in progress, we want to fail out. So this will be return. And then if we can't find the player or we can't find the world and or the list view is invalid, we just don't want to do a search. So that should all break out. We'll put a log in there, make an error log, so like the search failed, so we know that happened. Although if a search is in progress and we're spamming the button, we probably don't want it to display as a log error, so I might just make it a warning. You could break this down into so you could say failed search in progress already if you wanted to break it out like that. But assuming everything's good, we want to set our search to in progress to true because we're about to start one. We're going to remove that no session display, so we're going to collapse that, and we are going to clear the current list of results that we've got. If this is not our first search, we're going to clear the list, and we're going to set our spinner to enable true. So now we need to get the session subsystem, as we've done a couple of times before. It involves getting the common game instance, sure, add that include, and then we get the common session subsystem reference. So include that as well. So now we want to create a session search result, which we're going to populate. So the session subsystem has a function for that, create online search session request. So that so now we've got a request that we can use, and we want to just put a binding to when the session search completes, and we want to pass that session search result to this on session search complete function, which we haven't done yet. So the other one we've got to do. So before we go on to populate that function, we just want to initiate the actual find sessions. And that's also in the session subsystem. Find sessions, pass the player, and pass the session search result, which this will populate and pass on to the through this delegate, pass on to the session search complete. And then if for some reason we fail to create this session search result, I'll just put a log in here saying error. It shouldn't really ever happen, but it's there in case it does. So now on to our on session search complete. This is where we want to populate our list view. So we're just going to check, first of all, that the search is successful and the session search result is not null here. Now and then we'll also add here, we'll add like a fail out here. So if some reason it hasn't succeeded the session search result is invalid for whatever reason, we just want to display our no sessions to display UI, and we'll send a log. So we'll just log an error saying we failed the session search. In the succeeded branch here, we just want to check if we actually have some results. So does the results array have results of servers that it's found? And again, if it doesn't, we just want to display, we don't need to log an error this time, but we just want to display our no sessions found display if there's none. So now our list view, which is a list view, we just want to set the list items and we're going to pass the results. And then that will go through, and if we go back to our entry, that'll then start firing off this list item objects, and that'll be the session search result, and it'll start populating each list. And each of those entries will be populated in the list view. And then we'll just set the user focus to the list view again, because we've been popping up spinners and other things, so we're just setting it back to, so once the list completes the search, if you're using, say, a controller, then your control will be on the list of servers, so you can push up and down and select one, for example. And then we just want to ensure that if we do have items to display, we don't want to just ensure that our no sessions to display is off. And that should be our session widget. So the only other widget that we want to create is we just want to create a main menu. So I'm going to create one more. I'm just going to call it S menu multiplier widget. And that's going to be activatable widget again. Activatable widget, abstract. We're going to have we'll set the native uninitialized and the get desired focus target again. Protected. And then we're going to have we'll have 3 buttons in here to be host, join, and exit. So let's put those in protected section here, and they'll just be our button-based widgets like that. And then we'll want functions for when we click on those, so we can bind the on-click delegate to that. And then we're going to need a reference to the host menu and the join sessions menu. So when we click these, we can load that widget and add it to the stack, for example. So we'll just put in some soft class pointers to our host session widget and our join session widget. It's not really any other better place to define these. Like we could have a general settings. Like I've got the static game thing, you could make a general settings reference file for that if you wanted to. Yeah, you'd have to make a blueprint class of it though. It'd have to be like an actor or something. So this is just, might as well just do it this way, and just make sure we can assign these, make it blueprint read write, and edit defaults or edit anywhere is fine as well. So now we'll just generate these declarations, and we need to bind our buttons here. I'm not gonna go through that in too much detail again. We've done it a few times now, so including the button base at the top. So we're just binding the on-click delegate for each of them to those functions that we assigned. Pretty straightforward. We'll make the host button so that'll be the first button, make the host button the focus. And then in these functions, we just need to, the exit button's a bit different, so we'll just do that. We're going to just use the Kismet systems library to call the quick game, passing the world context, the player. Actually, we probably should check that player is valid, so it doesn't chuck an error instead of quitting. And then, we just want to quit. So the host button, we'll check that our button is valid. It's going to be the same for we'll check that the class this is just in case we haven't assigned that class variable, so we don't know what widget to load when we click the button. So with this check, it'll just do nothing. It won't crash or anything. So we need a reference to the world, because we're going to create a widget as always. Let's just duplicate this as we go, because these two are very identical. And then we're going to need a reference to our primary game layout. Include that. And then we've done this before, we're just going to push the widget to the layer stack, and the functions will push to widget layer stack async. Let's just copy this in. So we're calling the function on the root layout, push widget to layer stack. We're telling it what to cast the widget to, so we want it to cast to a common activatable widget, and then we need to tell it what layer we want to pass to, and we use a game tag for that. So we're passing, this is our menu stack, so we're just going to include our static game data.h, so we can reference that tag. If you don't recall, we set up the tags, so this is the name we gave for the tag, and then in the CPP we define the tags here, so we're sending it to the layer menu. And then suspend input, so you can't click out or do anything while it's just loading this widget, which should be pretty much instantaneous anyway. This error here, if you have a look, it's saying no, this should be a common activatable widget, not this host session widget. I think this might be just a writer thing. It's not reading these soft class pointers properly. I'm not sure. but all it needs is a reference to the widget. So if you just manually add that, I'm not sure if Studio does this as well. Like you can see, Riders doesn't even think that I'm referencing this class, but not sure what's going on there. But anyway, if you add these, if you just add the includes for the join and the host widgets, it'll fix up that error. And then the last part is a Lambda expression, and it's just doing a switch statement. Not exactly sure why this is needed, but this is how it's done. So we'll just do the same for the join widget class here. So when those buttons are clicked, it's basically just going to push the join or the host to the menu layer stack. And that concludes the C++ for now. So we'll just end this video here, and in the next video we'll continue on with creating the actual widgets in the editor. Please don't forget to like if you found this tutorial helpful, and subscribe so you don't miss out on future tutorials. You can join me on Discord or sign up to my Patreon, where you can get access to all my tutorials early and the project files, as well as gain access to behind the scenes on my current game development. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Thank you for watching. See you next time.